Welcome to this episode of Unraveling Adoption, a safe space to delve into adoption's complexities together. I am Beth Syverson, an adoptive mom of a 19-year-old son, Joey, who's in recovery from addiction and who is struggling to find his path. I'm walking beside him while working on my own personal growth and healing. We are committed to helping anyone touched by adoption, and we want to help the general public understand adoption's complexities better, too. Today's guest is Kat Linquist, an adoptee and a practitioner of a transformational modality called magnetic mind. She has done her own release work around her adoption trauma using this process based on neuroscience. She will be sharing her adoption story and how she helps adoptees transform using this modality. At the end of this episode, we will be telling you about a free workshop where Kat will be demonstrating this technique. So stick around to the end to hear all the details. So thank you for being here on Unraveling Adoption, Kat.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, let's unravel this and figure out what's going on with adoption.
Absolutely.
Can you give us all the answers?
I'll give you some. I'll give you some. I guarantee, and some from my own perspective, because one of the things I truly believe is that reality is based on each individual person's perspective of the world. Mm-hmm. And so I can give you what has worked for me, and it may work for others.
Yep, that's right. That's good. And everybody finds what works for them, right?
Absolutely.
You know, this may not be everybody's cup of tea, but maybe somebody it will super transform. And I have to tell our audience that I am very happy to share your process because you were able to show me how it works. Yep. And it was absolutely transformational for me. It was just a week ago and I'm still a little buzzing from it. So. But before we get into that, I want to just have you share your outline of your adoption story.
Great.
What are your adoption credentials?
Excellent. Well, I was born in Southern California in 1969, born to a lovely young woman who was in high school. And from everything that I put together at this point, she left home to have me in the adoption homes that they have, the programs that were designed for young women who were needing to give birth. So I was adopted through an agency. So I grew up in Southern California in a upper middle class home. And growing up, I always knew that I was adopted. So there was never any big reveal. I remember as a child, we actually had some little children's books that talked about how we were chosen and we were special and all these different things, which of course now we're coming to realize is not the way to to work in this field. Yeah. But these were the things that were very prominent in the late 60s and early 70s.
They meant well, right?
They did. They did. So growing up, it was a process where I realized very early on that I just never felt like I belonged. Like I never felt truly connected in this family. And it was very interesting, the stories that I grew up with and the household that I grew up in. There were elements where I have a sibling who's also adopted, and my sibling came first. And there were elements of my siblings' upbringing, their personality, and just different pieces of their story that meshed very well with my adoptive family. And when I came along, I didn't mesh so well.
Dang it.
My personality and my temperament and my particular story and experiences created friction in the family. And so because of that, I grew up feeling like I just didn't belong. I didn't connect the way that my sibling did. And one of the big pieces for me was this feeling that I was a firstborn. And I knew very early on this concept of firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, that there were positions in a family and that there were different personalities and different expectations of different positions of how children were born. And I was a firstborn child in a secondborn position.
Yeah, so you're firstborn to your birth mother.
Right.
And secondborn in your adoptive. I've never thought about birth order in that light. Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of blowing my mind right now. Because I'm a middle and I totally get the birth order thing.
Right.
I get it.
Right.
I get it.
And
wow.
so that also made a big impact on me growing up was I always felt like, but I'm a firstborn. I'm a firstborn.
Mhm.
I have leadership qualities. I have all these different things. And in my position in my family, I'm not allowed to express these things.
Mhm.
And it was very evident to me that I just really didn't fit in. And as I've grown into my adulthood, there's other aspects of my life that I don't fit in as well, just with my orientation in many different ways. I don't fit into my family. And another piece that I grew up with was I was always highly intuitive. And I could notice things and feel things and sense things and even know things that no one else in the family seemed to pick up on. And an interesting story about this is when I was in high school, I did a lot of writing. I'm a poet and I do a lot of short story writing. And that was part of my therapy, I would say, when I was younger, was I could express myself through my poetry and my writing. And when I was in high school, I wrote a short story called What If? And it was about this adopted girl who had a new neighbor move in down the street, and they had 2 little kids, and she felt like the mother looked like her, and she kept dreaming, well, what if this was my birth mother? What if, I know these certain things about her, and she might have stayed in the area. She might have this, and this. And then she went to babysit for the family. And while she was looking in the garage for games or something, she came across this diary that talked about how she'd given up this child for adoption. And, so all these different things. And in the story, I gave that mother, a particular name. And when I came to find my birth family, which is another part of my story I'll share in a minute, my birth mother had the same name as the mother that I wrote the story about.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that is incredible.
So, yeah. So
Wow.
when I got in contact with my birth mother, I didn't realize it for about a year. And when Mother's Day was coming up, our second Mother's Day that we were in connection, I remembered that story. And I had a copy of it in my old files. And so I pulled it out, and it was that moment that I realized I had given her the same name.
Wow, that just kind of gives you goosebumps. Wow. And how did the reunion with your birth mom go?
It actually was really good. And I want to come back around to that because the concept of being intuitive and the work that I am doing now through Magnetic Mind and how I'm supporting adoptees and anyone in the adoption constellation, it really ties into all of that. And how I came to find my birth parents is also connected in with that part of my journey. So to kind of roll back a little bit, as I was growing up, my adoptive parents were always very, very, very supportive of whether I chose to do searches or not search, whatever I wanted, they were very open and supportive of. And that's one thing I truly appreciate about them.
That's nice.
And over the years, I hemmed and hawed, and there were times where I thought about it, but I never did it. And then I had my own child. And when I had my own child, there were some feelings that came up, and I thought about it again, and I didn't do anything. And then my child was about 9, 10 years old and started asking me, well, Mom, if you're adopted, that means that Grandma and Grandpa aren't really your parents. Then who are your parents? And it was just that innocent child asking that question, them putting all the pieces together in their own mind. That was one moment where I went, I don't know. And it really was a profound moment for me. And I thought, maybe I'll start doing some searching. And this was around 2009. So internet was there, but it wasn't like it is today.
Yeah.
So I did some searching, and having been born in the state of California, all my records are sealed, and there's only certain ways that things can get unsealed. And I just wasn't willing to kind of go down that road.
Okay.
So I did some searches on the internet, put some information out there, but nothing really came of it. And it wasn't again until about 2018. So at that point, my child was 18, and they gave me a DNA test for Christmas.
Oh,
And it's like, okay, you want to know.
Yeah.
they knew enough about me that it was something that I would be willing to do.
Okay.
So I did the DNA test, and when it came back, there were second and third cousins. There was one person that was kind of a possible first cousin,
Mm-hmm.
but even at that time, I still was kind of like, well, it didn't give me the immediate hit.
Okay.
You know, it didn't give me a sibling. It didn't give me a
Yeah.
parent. It didn't give me a grandparent. And I thought, okay, well, so be it. Whatever it
Mhm.
is, I'm just going to let it sit.
Mm-hmm.
So still letting it sit, right? So I'm still in this place where it's like, well, I want to know, but I don't want to know. And not really understanding why I don't want to know and why I'm not actually actively pursuing this
Mm-hmm.
until I started with the Magnetic Mind program.
Oh, okay.
And when I started with the Magnetic Mind program, I was doing it just for my own personal self-development,
Okay.
not related to adoption at all. And within the first month, I was on this trajectory where I knew I wanted to go into business for myself. And I had some blockages about that. And I knew about that. So I was on a call with my coach. And the way that the program works is it's a group program. And my coach is in Australia. I'm in the United States. There were literally 100 people on the call from all over the world. And we're doing this particular process called a superconscious recode. And in the process of the recode, we talk about what it is that we desire, what we want to create, how that feels. And then we go into where we are. What is it that we're feeling now?
Okay.
What's this comparison between what it is that we want and where we are now? And as we're unpacking the now, all of a sudden, this huge wave of emotion comes over me. And I had this clear vision that I was a mistake and I should never have been born.
Oof.
And this,
ouch.
it was so painful, something I'd never, ever experienced before in my life. And so I typed it into the chat and my coach said, "Oh, we're ripping a Band-Aid off tonight, Kat, are we?" And I said, "I guess so."
Mm.
So knowing there was this thing that came seemingly out of nowhere. And I wasn't even focused on adoption or my family or anything. I was focused on creating a
That
business.
wasn't even your goal. Wow. Were those feelings that you had, but just not addressed in some sort of modality like this? Or you had never consciously thought of those things that I'm not wanted and
I think when I was younger, I had experiences like that. And
okay.
it wasn't more that I was a mistake and that I shouldn't have been born. I think what I felt younger was more of the abandonment and the rejection.
Ah, gotcha.
That feeling of, in order for me to be chosen, I had to be given up.
Right.
More of that. This was something completely different.
Wow.
This was something really different, really deep seated, and something I'd really never had ever given thought to before or
Wow.
feeling to before. And so as we're going through the modality, I'm in my home having a total meltdown, complete and utter meltdown, which can happen in these types of processes.
Mm-hmm.
And as I'm listening in my headphones to my coach going through the process and everything, I hear him say, "Okay, everybody, just kind of sit there for a moment. Kat, this is for you." Now, mind you, the way the process works is it's set up that my coach cannot see us on Zoom. He cannot hear us on Zoom, but he connects into the energetic field that we all emanate and connect to.
Mm-hmm.
So he connected to me specifically through the superconscious field. And he was able to take me in this amazing journey where he took me back to before I made the decision to come into this life. So I'm a person who believes that we're energetic beings. We choose to come into human form.
Mm-hmm.
So he took me back to this place where I was energetic form and I was choosing to come into my human experience, this specific human experience.
Okay.
And he said, "So I want you to see that you chose to come here. You chose this specific path. And in reality, you said that life was going to be good and you were going to enjoy life and have fun and be in a joyful state in life.
Mm-hmm.
And you've just forgotten that. So this is your reminder. And from this point, I want you to see that this was a choice. You weren't a mistake. This was a choice. This was a very specific conscious choice that you made to come here. So now we're going to bring you back forward all the way through my gestation, through my birth, through my entire life, all the way out till I'm over 50 years old, back into my body now. And as soon as I came back into my body now, that feeling completely disappeared. There
Wow.
was a complete opening of my chest. This heart-centered place opened up in my chest, and it was done, and it was gone.
Wow.
And from that moment forward, all of those feelings of abandonment, rejection, everything that I had felt so deep-seated about kind of that negative feeling about my adoption had been resolved and had been
Wow.
cleared out. And it took about 2 months to really continue processing and allowing that to filter through all of my
Yeah.
system and everything, because it had been such
bet.
a powerful experience. And it was in January of 2020. So 2 months later, we're talking right at the beginning of COVID and lockdown
Oh,
and all
boy.
this other stuff going on in the world, right? And here I am in this euphoric state, and like literally the world is shutting down and
Yeah.
crumbling around me. And I'm just like, oh, I feel great. Like, this is like the best I've ever felt in my entire life.
Oh my gosh.
And you know what? I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm ready to find them. I'm ready to know where I came from.
Oh, okay.
And as I made that decision, the very specific piece of this that came to me was, this isn't about reunion. This isn't about you actually finding them to meet them. This is about you understanding and knowing and connecting with your heritage and your lineage.
Okay.
And for me, that experience of being able to see my family tree on paper or on the computer or whatever it is, that there's a representation of the family that brought me into this world, that I am connected to through my DNA. That was the impetus for my discovery. It wasn't trying to connect with the actual people because I felt a loss or a disconnect or a piece missing.
Oh, okay.
Because there was no longer anything missing about any of this.
Wow.
And one of the things that my coach taught me is that there is no way for you to belong more or less to your DNA family, whether you know them or not.
Okay, let me think about that.
And I'll say that again. There's no way for you to belong any more or less to your DNA family, whether you know them or not. You are a part of that family. Your DNA is their DNA. You belong to that family no matter what.
Right.
And that was so profound for me as an adult. I don't think I would have understood it as a child.
Right.
But as an adult, it really rang true and made sense. And that was another piece of this wholeness and this connectedness that I felt internally was, oh, it really doesn't matter whether I know them or not. I know that this is my family. And I love genealogy, and I've actually done genealogy on my adopted family because I was so interested in it. And so I thought, well, I want to see where I'm from.
Yeah.
And if I get to meet people along the way, that's truly the cherry on top.
Yeah.
And I also had come to this place because I had released that trauma, that if their decision was not to be in connection with me, that I was perfectly fine with that. That I recognized that it could have gone the complete opposite of, no, I don't want to connect with you. I don't want to know you. I don't want a relationship with you. I don't ever want to hear from you again.
So you were prepared.
And I was completely prepared for that.
And is that what happened?
And what happened was, to make a very long story short, I found my birth mother on Facebook.
Okay.
And I messaged her on Facebook. And I messaged in a way to say, hey, I'm an adopted person. I've been doing some DNA research, and it appears that we're related.
Oh.
I didn't come out and say, you're my birth mother. I didn't come out and say, I'm your child. I framed it in a way that I gave them the out. They could have copped out and said, no, that doesn't ring true to me.
Right.
Whatever. And I would have let it go.
Okay.
And she came back 2 days later and said, yes, we are related, and I'm your mom.
Oh.
And we've been in contact for almost 3 years now. We haven't met in person yet just due to COVID and other things, but we talk on the phone about every 2 months.
Nice.
And she sends me cards at every holiday. She sends me flowers on my birthday. And she
Aw.
sends Christmas presents to me and my child. And
Oh,
yeah, and it's really, really, really beautiful.
that's amazing.
I really feel for me, I couldn't have asked for anything better,
Hmm.
but had it gone a different way, I would have been okay.
You would have still been okay. Well,
Yeah, still would have been okay.
wow.
And I found out that my birth father is deceased,
Okay.
had been deceased for quite some time. However, I did find an aunt.
Oh, okay.
And so I've actually been in contact with my aunt for about 1.5 years. And
Nice.
just over the past holidays, I was able to go and meet her in person.
Very good. Oh,
So
very nice.
that was lovely. And as soon as I walked in, and she gave me just this deep, 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 deep hug. And she looked at me and she goes, "Oh yeah, you belong to us."
Oh,
Those literally were her first words to me, where "you belong to us."
that makes you feel so good.
Because you look just like your sister. I have 3 sisters on my birth father's side, and I have 2 brothers on my birth mother's side.
Oh, wow. Okay. Have you met them yet?
And I am firstborn. I have not met any siblings. I am in contact with one of my sisters. She's kind of the family genealogist.
Oh, okay.
So she is sharing boatloads of information about my family, and I'm just soaking it all up.
I bet.
And then another sister I've just started contacting on Facebook just by messages. So yeah,
Wow, so this is all really fresh.
it is very,
Wow.
very fresh, all within 3 years, but really, I mean, just in the last month.
Wow.
Really, in the last month, I've had on my birth father's side all this flood in. It's been beautiful.
Wow. That's
So
really
yeah,
nice.
very, very fresh, very exciting. And I think that as we look at this experience called adoption,
Mhm.
a lot of times we have this very specific set of emotions. We have a very specific structure and viewpoint of what it all means.
Mhm.
And I do know that as human beings, every single person comes into this world experiencing trauma.
Yeah. I think it's impossible to escape without
Yeah.
something bad happening to you.
Without something. And
Yeah.
and just the act of becoming human creates certain levels of wounding. And I actually talk about that in my workshop. And so I'll go into that a little bit. If you come join my workshop, you'll get to hear all about that.
Yeah.
But we all come into this life with levels of wounding. And I've come to understand that people in the adoption constellation, we each have our own unique wounding that is part of that constellation, as we say.
Yes.
And when we bring those together, it can create kind of a spiral effect.
In a good way?
It could go in a good way or a bad way. It really depends. And I think that the more that we start to talk about it, the more we open up about it, just as we've learned through looking at opening up around sexual orientation, gender identity, any other type of marginalized or hidden group that we see, the more that we talk about it, the more we open up, the more we begin to understand, and the more options we have to rewrite and redefine how we want this to go.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just did a workshop about suicidality, and we just need to start talking about all of these difficult topics, make it more on the table and less secretive and hush hush and, oh, we just don't talk about that.
Right. Because that's the way it was, especially when I was adopted.
Yeah.
This was back in the late 60s. There was still that hush hush. We don't talk about it.
Yeah.
We send the mother away so that she's out of the community. And then she sometimes comes back, sometimes she doesn't.
Yeah.
And, she goes on to live her own life and
pretend, quote unquote, that everything is fine.
Right. Because that was what she was told to do, was just basically suck it up and let it go and
get on with your life.
Move on with your life. And in some respects, adoptees have been told the same thing, is that, well, you had this wonderful opportunity given to you. Why are you saying that you're in pain or you're angry or you're upset or, whatever it is? It's like, you should be grateful. You should be, thankful and all these other things. And it's like, yes and no.
Yeah.
It's very, very gray. There's no black and white to any of this. And yet, one of the things that I've learned as an adult is that while I can't go back and change my past, I can't change the experiences of my past. But what I can actually change is the way I think and feel about it.
Very good. And is that what your modality does? It kind of realigns your brain to think in a different way, think and feel in a different way?
It does. What we do is we help people rewrite your adoption narrative and to integrate those parts of you that were wounded, that were scared, that were disassociated, detached, taken away, whatever language that you use to describe your personal experience about this. I can use this modality to support you in letting go of the pain and integrating those parts into your adult self at this point in your life, however you are in your life. I'm in my 50s. Some people might be in their 20s, 30s, 70s, 80s.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter what your experience has been. And the same goes for birth parents.
Sure.
As well as adoptive parents, because as you know, as an adoptive parent, there are woundings and traumas that you have experienced in your life that led you to this place of becoming part of the adoption constellation.
Oh, yeah, sure. Yeah, I never dealt with my infertility grief before. I'm dealing with it now, and it's tough.
Yeah.
It's tough stuff. And then there's also, our children don't look like us. There's a lot of layers to it.
Right.
There's a lot. Right. And so everybody, I agree, everybody has their little pile of stuff. Adoptees for sure have the, I don't know if it's not a contest or anything, but you guys had no choice in the matter. So I always feel like we should prioritize your feelings, your needs, because you guys had no say in this whole thing. The other two parties did.
Right. And even if a birth mother or birth parents had a choice, I can only imagine the choices that you were made available.
Yeah.
And then, it's like, do I pick the worst one or do I pick the horrific one?
Right. Yeah.
Other than being able to support unification.
Yeah.
That's ultimately, I hope, the goal of being able to support families to stay together. And it's very interesting because as someone who is adopted, and I have my own biological child, my biological child's partner is adopted.
Oh, you're kidding.
I'm not.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
It comes around again.
It comes around again, and they have their own story, and I won't share it here because it's not mine to share. But I just find that so interesting because one of the aspects that I help people with is when I'm doing this work is a lot of our woundings come through our DNA.
Sure. Is this epigenetics? Is that what you call it?
Epigenetics, right.
Yeah.
And so looking at this idea of epigenetics, that traumas and woundings are generational and how they manifest in different ways throughout the generations. And yet, if we are not cognizant and we are not addressing those DNA and generational wounds, we will continue to perpetuate them.
Yes.
And that's one of the really unique things about the modality that I use is I can actually take someone back into their DNA lineage and we can find whether we actually know what specifically happened or not. Sometimes we can read in the field what it is. Sometimes we just know that there's an event, that there's something that happened generations back that is impacting the person that I'm working with.
Yeah, that's what happened to me.
That's exactly what happened to you. So I've looked back in my own DNA lineage now, and I've done enough work where before I knew who my family was, before I knew my family tree, which I've actually done extensive work on my family tree, and I'm already back into the 1600s, which is really, really amazing.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Ancestry.com is quite amazing. Wow. And I am not paid to say that. It really is quite an amazing tool. But to be able to go back, and there were pieces that my coach was able to go back into my DNA and pull out pieces and release things that were back in my DNA that have blocked me from moving forward. And those blockages are now gone. And so being able to do that for people is really amazing, because I think back to the things that I've experienced in my own life and generationally looking at the traumas, and now hearing from my sister and what she knows about my actual family. And there have been murders, suicides,
Whoa.
there have been all kinds of mental health issues. There's been a lot.
Whoa.
And it's like, oh, wow, how very interesting. And yet these are the things that I've dealt with in my life and things that my child has dealt with as well. And looking at how all of that has been passed down through DNA.
Wow. And just to be clear, you have not murdered anyone that I know of.
No, I have not. No, this was back in the past.
Okay. But that sense of heaviness in your lineage, that bad shit has gone down.
Yeah.
And you sensed that probably always.
Always. Yeah. That I was carrying this burden.
Wow. Oh, I have one question. Do you call yourself healed from adoption trauma?
No, actually, I don't. The way I perceive it is I have released my pain.
Release.
I've released the pain because the way that I frame this is every emotion that we have as adults are a choice. We can choose how we want to feel about something.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say that we don't get hit with things that happen immediately: grief, anger, frustration, joyful, tears of happiness. All those things can happen in a split second. But a lot of that is through our conditioning.
Yeah.
And if you think about even the concept of grief, there are cultures in the world that when someone dies, they celebrate.
True. Yeah.
And in our culture, we grieve. We find that very sad. And so there's a particular conditioning and patterning that happens in cultures and families and generations over time. And so our emotions, we tend to put in a place of, well, that's just how I feel. That's just how I feel, rather than this is how I've been taught to feel. This is how I choose to feel. I can choose to feel sad. I can absolutely choose to feel sad that my friend or my cat or my whoever has died or has gone on or whatever it is. I can choose to grieve. I can choose to do this. And what happens is when we are not in choice and in responsibility for our emotions, they will take over our lives.
Yeah. When that happens, it's more kind of like gut instinct, not higher level thinking or feeling. It's more like just habit, kind of. Is that?
It's habit and it's reaction.
Yeah.
And then we get addicted to that reaction.
Sure. Yeah.
And so as I work with clients, I help them to become very conscious and very clear about who do you want to be? How do you want to create your life? What are the things that you choose to experience in this human life that you have before you, however long you have left on this planet?
Yeah.
And as I work with people, we understand there are things that happen to us. There are circumstances that we have absolutely no control over. And as children, we have even less control over the experiences that we have. And we have less control over how we manage our emotions if someone doesn't teach us how to regulate and how to, do that, which unfortunately most people in my generation and probably most generations really are not taught how to emotionally regulate.
It's getting better for younger people.
It is getting much better. It is getting much better. And I'm so thankful for that. So when I'm working with clients, I really help to reframe their mind so that they see they now have a choice. They now have the ability to respond rather than to just react.
Yeah.
So when we're working around creation, because my focus is I'm here to help you create yourself and your life to be whatever it is that you want. And when we focus on what we want to create, we have these other pieces of us that come up, just like I described in that experience with my coach where that feeling of you're a mistake and you should never have been born popped up when I wanted to go and create a business.
Ah.
So what happened was I was focusing on something that I really, really wanted to create. And there's part of me said, you're not allowed to have that because you shouldn't even be here.
Oh.
And it was like, oh, I'm not allowed to have anything I want because I technically shouldn't be here. This part of me was so powerful internally that said, you don't deserve to have what you want. You're not good enough to have what you want. You're not worthy of it. All these different pieces. And it's like, wow. So when we go into the modality, we remove those pieces of pain, those pieces that are not in harmony and alignment with what it is that you are wanting to create. We go in and we reframe that, we recode it or rewire it in the brain. And we have very, very specific ways that we do this in our modality. And it's very gentle. It is by consent only. So we cannot just tap into somebody's brain. We have to, work with you, have consent.
Yeah.
And we release the pain and then we integrate the wisdom of the experience that you've had.
Okay.
So it's not that you forget what happened. It's that we release the pain of the experience.
Okay.
And we allow the wisdom and the learnings and the knowledge of that experience to be integrated into where you are today.
Okay.
So that part of you is now in alignment with what it is that you want to create.
Got it. And just so everybody knows, there are no substances involved.
Nope.
No hypnosis. You're
No
completely
hypnosis.
awake the whole time. And it's relatively quick. When you did my session, it was like 10 minutes?
Yeah, 10 or 15 minutes.
Doing the actual thing?
Right.
Yeah. Would it be helpful if I gave a very brief summary of what happened to me?
I would love for you to share with your experience. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, so I'm not an adoptee, and I guess I could have chosen to work on something related to adoption, but I know that you work with people that are not dealing with adoption at all anyway. But so you asked me what I wanted to work on, and for some reason, I hadn't thought about this ahead of time or anything. I said, I want to work on money because I'm super blocked with money, with entrepreneurship kind of money. If I have a job, fine. But making my own money, I've always been blocked. And so you led me in a meditation and kind of visualized what money looks like or what I wanted money to look like. And it was a beautiful image. And I continue to have this image coming through my head. I'm a pianist and that was my safe space. You told me to go find a safe space. And I've never done this before, but I chose the piano as my safe space, which of course it is. That has always been my safe space. But when people always say that, I always feel like I have to be outside. I don't know. It's like, find a beautiful place. But my beautiful and safe space was my piano this time, which was great because that is where I'm super comfortable. And then money came into this picture by popping out of this grand piano lid like a popcorn popper. Little stacks, rolled up stacks of money just kept bursting forth, and the piano lid kept opening more and more and more and more, like an old-fashioned popcorn maker. So it was very clear to me that money is abundant, and that is how I want to view money. So that was very reassuring. And then you asked money to look at myself and where I was at, and I was 12 years old, giving my first piano lesson and asking for $3 and feeling like a criminal for asking for $3 for a lesson. And that's still how I feel. Like, will you pay $10? Will you pay $100? I'm like, oh, I feel terrible asking you for this. But so that needs to change. And it was clear to me that it was very old energy, a 12-year-old energy that was running my financial life, which needs to stop. And then you asked to tap into my superconscious, and I was fine with that. I'm like game for just about anything. And you got a message, or I don't know what you call it, a message that some relative on my dad's side had been swindled out of money, probably a large sum of money, I'm going to guess.
Right.
Because for many generations after that, including me, we have been resistant to salespeople and entrepreneurs. It's been like a block. So that was interesting. I don't know who it is. I asked my mom and my dad, and they have no idea. So it might have been way before their awareness of anything. And it doesn't, I guess it doesn't really matter who it is.
It doesn't matter.
Then you asked that person to hold on to their issue that they had with whatever happened to them, that it does not belong to the rest of us. And that would you please, you were very nice about it too. You said, could you please, if you wouldn't mind, keep your damn stuff to yourself. Right?
Right. Pretty much.
It's not mine. And it was a beautiful release for me because I realized that my blockages about money, I participate in it and I continue to go with it, but it is not my issue to start with. I was given this block when I was born.
Right.
And it does not belong to me. And so it was very easy for me to say, nope, this is not mine. You can have it back. And I felt so good. And I decided, I'm super open-minded about this stuff, but I don't really know what's happening. But I decided just to accept that this is working because I really want my money situation to change. So the next day I was at my church job and I got a check out of nowhere from another company that sent it to my church out of all places. And then later that week, another person that I had done a webinar for said, I want to pay you another $100 because I don't think I paid you enough. I think that you deserve to be paid more. And I said, okay. And normally I would have said, oh, no, you already paid me. It's okay. You don't need to pay me anymore. But I'm like, hell no. I'm saying yes to this money that is coming toward me instead of pushing it away. So it was a big success story after just a week. And every day I'm kind of looking out, okay, where's the money going to come from today? And I believe money is not evil or corrupt or anything. Money itself is just abundance and there's enough for everybody and it's all good. So thank you so much for helping me with that. And it's very easy for me to see how you could apply this to an adoptee or to a more personal pain that's not money, which is sort of external, but still kind of personal. But if there's some blockage generationally, maybe the adoptee's birth grandmother had some sort of major thing.
Could have been.
Who knows?
Right.
I can totally see how this modality could help release those things that have been handed down that are not yours to begin with.
Right.
Did I do a good job at summing that up?
You did a beautiful job. And just to kind of circle back about money's just a measurement. It's a measurement of value given and received. That's all it is.
It's neither good nor bad.
Yeah, it's not good or bad. It's just a measurement of the value that someone gave you and the value that you received and how much you chose to pay for that. And that's all it is. It's just an exchange of value. And when we can take the emotion out of money and this concept of, money is a spiritual thing or it's a this or a that, money's just a measurement. That's all it is.
Interesting.
And it's a made up measurement to begin with,
it's a construct anyway.
And so the thing that's behind it is the value of whatever's been exchanged. And I read a story quite a while ago where there was a period of time, I think it was back in the 1500s, when tulips were more valuable than gold.
Oh, interesting.
In the Netherlands because they had a crop that failed. And like all their tulips died. And it was a huge thing in that area. The Netherlands are known for their tulips.
Yeah, that's what they're known for. Yeah.
And so the few tulips that survived, they were so important that they became more valuable than gold.
Wow.
And so it's just made up.
It's kind of like eggs right now.
Right.
What is going on with the eggs? Yeah, it is just a value.
Yeah.
I love that.
And we can do the same with anything. We can look at our pain. We can look at our past. The past doesn't actually exist. The past is only exists because you create a memory of it and you keep bringing it back into your current reality. The past doesn't exist.
Because all that exists is right now.
Yeah.
This
If we
is deep.
live in the here and now, if we live right here in the now, the past doesn't exist. The future doesn't exist.
Yeah.
All we have is this moment, this moment, this moment.
Yeah.
So if we continuously bring the past into the now, then where are we living? We're actually living in the past.
Yeah. Right.
And so in order for us to release the past, we have to release the pain because it's the emotion that is what drives everything.
Mm-hmm.
The emotions drive everything. So when we release the pain, we can integrate the past into the present, and we can align all those experiences, all the wisdom, all the knowledge,
Mm-hmm.
all the information into where we are right now, and then look forward and say, I know that there's a future version of me that has everything I want. It's created, it's there. And I then help you see that future version of you that has whether it's money, whether it's the relationships, whether it's just joy and satisfaction in your life, whatever, however you choose to create your life, that version of you is connected to you. And we call it magnetically, which is why the program is called Magnetic Mind.
Okay.
So we have this magnetic connection to all aspects of ourselves.
Yeah.
And there are aspects of ourselves that are within our physical body and that are outside of our physical body. And so we can see that there's a version of us in the future. We connect magnetically to them and we say, oh, well, look at what you have. You have everything that I want. And so then what is the next obvious step that I need to take from here to get to there? When we go to take that next step, that's when those things of the past come up and they say, that doesn't fit what our old paradigm is. You're going somewhere we don't want you to go. And then we do the process and we say, thank you very much. We know you want to keep us safe. We need to release the pain.
Yeah.
We release the pain, we integrate, and then we can take the next step.
That is so amazing. I love that. And I know epigenetics are involved in what you're doing. Is it also metaphysics? Is that what metaphysics
Yes,
is?
it's actually the lovely thing about Magnetic Mind is it pulls from a variety of modalities. It includes NLP, epigenetics, neuroscience, metaphysics, a whole power versus force. There's all kinds of modalities that my coach and mentor who created this, he pulled together, I'll call it the best of the best.
Wow.
And he saw that each of these modalities and concepts and ideas all had validity, but they were all kind of in their own little box. And when you pull them all together, it's like having a mosaic where you have all of the colored pieces of glass and they're all scattered around. But then you take each of those pieces and you place them in a certain way and you make this beautiful picture.
Nice.
And that's what I feel he's done with Magnetic Mind is he has pulled all these different modalities, the best of these modalities together and has created this amazing mosaic of a process and a way of living that is blowing the socks off of anything that I've ever seen.
Wow.
And over the last 10 years, I've been on my own personal journey, and I can tell you I've done a lot of different modalities. I had success for a little bit, and then I fell back into my old patterns. Had success for a little bit, fell back into my old patterns. And not to say that I haven't had my stops and starts with Magnetic Mind as well, but I have certainly made way more progress in this particular modality. And quite frankly, it's my own doing because I would stop.
Right. You stop yourself.
You know, if I stayed consistent and I kept doing it all the time, then it becomes the way I live.
Gotcha.
Right. It's like anything else. It's like if you change the way you eat, people change professions. You have to learn a new way of living and being and behaving. This is exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
It's a choice of how you want to live. And I want to live as a powerful creator, and I want to give that gift to other people.
Nice. Well, you certainly gave me a gift with that session last week. And I want my listeners to know that when she did that session, I felt completely safe. I could have gotten out of it at any time.
Anytime.
There was nothing spooky about it or creepy at all. It was just tapping into what's out there and in my lineage and my epigenetics, I guess that would be. And I feel transformed. We'll see. I'm going to continue to be open and being aware of those messages of, oh, you don't deserve to be doing this, or that's kind of icky, you asking for money. That I'm going to say, no, that does not belong to me. I'm going to keep pushing that
Yes.
away because that's not my paradigm anymore. So
There you go.
And so we're going to have this workshop. I'll tell everybody about it in a second, but they don't have to wait for the workshop, right? They could just call you anytime and work with
Absolutely.
you on Zoom, right?
Absolutely. Yep. I work on Zoom. I can work with anyone, anywhere in the world.
Do you work with individuals or groups or both?
Both.
Because when you
Yeah.
had your big breakthrough, you were with a group of 100 people.
I was with a group of 100 people. Yeah.
Isn't that
And
amazing?
regularly, my coach now works with 200 to 300 people at a time.
Wow.
Yeah.
But the energy is infinite, so
It is.
there's no limitation, right?
No. And truly, the beautiful thing is everyone gets what they need.
Right.
Everyone gets what they need because as individuals tapping into energy, the person who's leading the modality is really just a facilitator.
Well, why don't we tell them about the event? Unraveling Adoption is going to host Kat doing a webinar for us. And
Yay.
everyone's invited. It's free. It's for adults only.
Yes.
This is not the kind of thing kids have the maturity or the spiritual probably bandwidth to deal with. So this is an adults thing. Yeah.
18 or over.
18 or over. And going to be on Saturday, March 11th, 2023 at 10 a.m. Pacific time.
Yes.
Allow for 2 hours.
2 hours. And that will give us enough time so I can share my story, connect with people, give you some education, and then we'll do a process and then time for Q&A and then let you know what's next.
Yeah, sounds good. So there's a registration link in the show notes below. And feel free to invite your friends or family members. Do people have to bring adoption issues to this event or they can bring anything to it, right?
You can bring anything to the event. Obviously, being on this particular podcast, we are speaking to the adoption audience.
Yep.
However, this really can work for anyone on any topic.
Yep.
Come with an open mind, come with an open heart, and see that there's a possibility that you get to be the powerful creator that you were born to be.
Yeah.
And really, the way that this particular methodology works is we don't actually work on an issue. What we do is we help you get into a creative structure so that you are the powerful creator of your own life. And what I will ask is, if you're listening to this podcast and you want to come with what it is that you want to create for your life, whether it's a relationship, it's money, it's something in helping other people, whatever it is. You want more joy and satisfaction in your life. You want peace in your heart. If you want to feel deep inner peace, make that your focus because all the other stuff will come up. We don't go looking for the issue. The issue will arise.
Sure.
I guarantee it will arise. And sometimes it will surprise you like it did me.
Yeah.
But whatever it is that you want to focus on creating, that's where we start. And that's the vision and the focus that we have. All the other stuff will come. We will release the pain and then integrate so you can move forward.
I think that sounds great. And certainly there's enough adoption trauma for everybody to go around. So if you want to work on that, and I think Kat is particularly well suited to deal with adoption trauma because she's an adoptee and has been through it and understands.
Yes.
Well, I'm so glad that we found each other.
Yeah, me too.
I think that what you have to offer for the adoption community is very unique. And I know that some people in the adoption community are going to glom on and have some real transformation. So we're all here for it. So March 11th, be there for the free webinar. And if you're listening to this after that has already passed, I will put Kat's information. What is the best way for them to get a hold of you?
I have an email. It's Kat@Self Academy, and it's spelled SELFACADEMY.com.
Okay. All right. I'll put that email below, and so you can get a hold of Kat at any time. Well, thank you so much, Kat, for being here and sharing this wonderful work that you're doing. And thank you for helping me out with my money. Appreciate that.
You're very welcome, Beth. It's been a pleasure.
And listeners, please share this episode with anyone you know who might be interested in this kind of thing. Spread the word about our webinar and come find Unraveling Adoption. You can find our website at unravelingadoption.com, or you can find us on social media. Just look up Unraveling Adoption wherever you are. And we are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help maintain our commercial-free episodes, come join our Patreon for $5, $10, $25, or $50 a month. You can sign on as a Patreon supporter. That's at patreon.com/Unraveling Adoption. So be well, everyone. Thank you for listening. And Kat and I want you to stay safe.